Hello, my name is Ailish Angelini and I'm the principal of St Hugh's College. A very warm welcome to our website. I hope you enjoy visiting it and I hope one day that you'll come back and visit us in person. It's well worth a visit. I suppose you're thinking, well, she would say that, wouldn't she? But our students tell me that too. They love it here. We're set in 14 acres of stunning gardens. We have two amazing libraries. We have the world famous University of Oxford China Centre here in our college with its fantastic facilities available to our students. Our students love it because it's diverse, it's welcoming, it's friendly. And while it's serene and quiet during the day, it livens up, I can assure you, at night and at the weekends. Please enjoy it, and I look forward to seeing you when you come.
Hello, I'm David Taylor, and I'm a fellow and tutor here at St Hugh's in English literature. I specialise in literature and culture of the 18th century, and I publish books on theatre and also on the relationship between literature and visual culture in that period. And for the college, I teach literature from Shakespeare all the way through to the Romantics in the early 19th century. I'm also the tutor for equality and diversity at St Hugh's. This means I take an active role ensuring that the college is a welcoming and inclusive place for students from all backgrounds.
Hello, my name is Jeanette Chow. I'm a tutor in psychology at St Hugh's College. I did my undergraduate degree in psychology. I think it's because I was interested in the human mind, particularly face perception. But later on, I got more interested in language development. This might have something to do with the fact that I was brought up trilingual, so I was really interested in understanding how babies learn languages. My current research at the Oxford Baby Lab looks at the role of sleep in language development, and I was particularly interested in vocabulary development in babies.
My name's Adrian Moore and I teach philosophy here at St Hugh's College in Oxford. I'm interested in all aspects of philosophy, although most recently I've been working on the philosopher who, in my view, is the greatest of all time, the 18th century German philosopher Immanuel Kant, whose ideas have fascinated me ever since I first came across them as an undergraduate.
Hi there, I'm Professor Matt Husband. I'm a tutor in linguistics here at St. Hugh's College. My research is focused in psycholinguistics, although I also do theoretical linguistics in syntax and semantics. Well, I became interested in linguistics back when I was doing psychology, where I really wanted to understand the human mind, and I thought what better way to look at it than to use language as a mirror into that human mind. My particular interest in the field comes from two directions. So on one side, I'm looking at something called genericity. These are sentences like, dogs have 4 legs, triangles have 3 sides, or mosquitoes carry malaria. And one thing I'm interested in is that we can sometimes use various kinds of articles to indicate how strong you should take this kind of generalization to be. So for instance, you can say, the triangle has 3 sides, and you can say, a dog has 4 legs, but it's a little bit strange to say, the mosquito carries malaria, or a mosquito carries malaria. Those don't seem to have a generic quality, and I'm interested in why that is, both within English and then also cross-linguistically. When it comes to psycholinguistics, my recent work has been thinking about prediction. So whether we as language comprehenders are actually thinking about what someone's getting ready to produce before they produce it. We're interested in this because it could help us understand how it is that we come to comprehend language, and also how it is that we overcome sources of noise and other kinds of distraction that are in our environment so that we can successfully communicate with each other.
My name is Erin Saup, and I'm a tutor in Earth Sciences for St. Hugh's College. My particular specialty is paleobiology. I'm interested in understanding the evolution of life on Earth. Some of the questions that I ask in my research are why and how does speciation and extinction occur? How do species respond to environmental changes? I'm also interested in whether we can use the fossil record to conserve and protect present-day species. So can we take lessons from the past? For example, how species have responded to environmental changes? to better protect and conserve species today and into the future, especially given climate change. I've always loved paleobiology and the earth sciences. Being an earth scientist is a bit like being a detective, trying to piece together a puzzle to understand earth processes. I'm fascinated by Earth's biodiversity both today and in the past, and I like to share that enthusiasm with my students.
Hi, I'm Peter Mitchell. I'm the tutor in archaeology and anthropology at St. Hugh's. My own research at the moment involves me in starting to write a book about the comparative archaeology of Africa's islands, what we can learn from that, why African islands in particular have seen relatively little use made of them to understand island archaeology as a whole in the rest of the world. So I'm thinking here of topics like when and under what circumstances do people first settle on islands? What is the impact they have on the ecologies, the plants and the animals that they encounter? How do they shape those ecologies for their own purposes? What can we learn about islands as important hubs in trade networks, and also, particularly in the last few hundred years, as instances where slave labor and plantation economies operated? These are all questions that I'm beginning to get into at the moment, and which I look forward to tutorials helping me to understand a little bit more, in part.
Hello, I'm David Doyle. I am the Tutorial Fellow in Politics here at St. Hugh's College. Most of my own research is in comparative politics, and specifically a subfield of comparative politics, or comparative political economy, and I'm particularly interested in the comparative political economy of Latin American countries. I do a lot of work focusing on migration and remittances in Latin America and also elsewhere, and I'm also interested in studying taxation and tax structures in Latin America and also elsewhere. The reason I started to study politics and social science more generally was because I was fascinated by the idea of trying to simplify human behavior and human interaction. Human behavior and human interaction often seems just simply unmanageable or very complex, but through the social sciences, we try and provide some type of meaningful framework of analysis. And this type of framework of analysis is hopefully what we can teach you here at St. Hugh's.
Hello, my name is Eve Morizy and I'm the tutor for French at St. Hugh's. I work on 19th, 20th and 21st century French and Algerian Francophone literature, and more particularly I work on representations of extreme violence, especially state-sponsored violence. So I've written a bit on capital punishment and the way in which French writers have criticized capital punishment, for instance, Victor Hugo and Albert Camus. And at the moment, I work on a new research project that has to do with terrorism and the way in which French and Francophone writers have defined, redefined, and represented terrorism in its various guises.
Hello, my name is Thomas Cousins, and I'm a tutorial fellow here in Human Sciences at St. Hugh's. I also have an appointment in the School of Anthropology and Museum Ethnography as the Clarendon Lineheart Associate Professor in the Social Anthropology of Africa. My own work is focused on Southern Africa, which is where I'm from, and I've looked at ordinary people's struggles to secure health and livelihoods in the context of high rates of HIV and unemployment. How people think about health and well-being, and bodily capacity and social agency, family relations and political inclusion and recognition are all important issues in the place where I do fieldwork. At the moment, I'm finishing a book on health and hunger in the gut in Southern Africa, but I'm also continuing research on non-human animals and the role that zoonotic infection plays in shaping city life in South Africa.
Hello, my name's Tom Sanders, and I'm one of the mathematics tutors at St. Hugh's College. My own research interests are in an area called number theory, and so I'm sort of concerned with the whole numbers as a kind of basic object of study, and particularly interested in the building blocks of the whole numbers, that is to say the prime numbers. There are all sorts of really quite simple questions that we can ask where we simply don't know the answer, and I think that's one of the very appealing aspects of the subject, sort of how much we still have to understand. At the same time, it seems like these questions are very difficult questions, and I really enjoy that challenge. The difficulty, I find the subject tremendously hard, but I think that's what makes it rewarding. And I think that's what a lot of our undergraduates would say as well about their own experience of mathematics.
We've been asked to talk to you about a couple questions you might have in terms of the tutorial system, what kind of students we're looking for, and anything else that comes to mind. So here we go.
So what is a tutorial like? A tutorial in psychology usually involves a tutor and 2 students, or 3. You'll be given a reading list and an assignment to do before the tutorial. So it's your duty to do the reading, read up the textbooks, look up journal articles, and formulate arguments in your essay. In the tutorial, you'll be having conversations with your tutor and your tutorial partner about the work that you've done. You'll be presenting your own ideas and arguments and defending them, as well as challenging other people's views.
In tutorials, what we do is we often set pieces of work for you to think about ahead of time, where you do your own independent reading. And then you bring in some piece of work, either an assignment or sometimes an essay, and we talk through that essay, your comments and concerns on it, in either often a one-on-one or a two-on-one setting where it's you and another student.
Students who come to Redoc at St. Hugh's normally have 12 tutorials in a term. Each of those is about an hour long. Each consists of 2, occasionally 1, sometimes 3, but normally 2 students coming to see a tutor, either myself or somebody else, depending upon what it is they're studying at that particular time. And in that tutorial, we discuss the essay that they've written for it, the essay they've handed in before, and that they've received back with comment either before the tutorial starts or during the tutorial. We discuss that essay and we discuss the wider reading that they've done, and we discuss where the topic concerned fits within the course as a whole. One of the great things about being able to do that, as far as I'm concerned, is that I get to learn something from them, because whatever it is that they're doing it for the very first time, and they're going to come with their own perspective, a perspective informed by doing anthropology as well as archaeology, a perspective that feeds from their own particular interests and prior experiences. And that's really an enriching thing for me, and it feeds into my own research.
Tutorial is just a discussion between a tutor and a small number of students, 2 or 3, or occasionally even just 1. And in the case of a philosophy tutorial, you'd be looking at one of these fundamental questions. The student will have thought about the question in advance and will have written an essay about it in advance. And that essay will form the basis of the discussion. And between them, the tutor and the student will try to tease out some of the fundamental presuppositions that are being made, and will try to think as clearly and as precisely as possible about those presuppositions.
So typically a tutorial will be with 2 or 3 students and 1 tutor, and you'll usually have done a set of problems that have been produced by the lecturer, which you'd hand in beforehand to the tutor and discuss in tutorials. So in my own tutorials, I usually ask students to present part of their solutions, those parts that I think worthy of particular scrutiny, to present part of those solutions at the board, and then as a group we tend to discuss how the details of those solutions, how robust they are, and of course if they've gone very well, then how to extend them, and what other ideas they touch on. In the summer, although the weather today is not so good, when the weather is as it has been last month, then we're able to have tutorials outside, which of course is also very pleasant, particularly in the St. Hugh's setting, where we have some really lovely gardens.
A tutorial is a hybrid between a conversation and a class. It lasts for 1 hour. Typically, it takes place in your tutor's office. Before you meet with your tutor, you write an essay on a particular question. It may be on a book, on a writer, on a political, sociological, philosophical issue. And to write your answer, you read about the topic quite widely. You read both set texts and critical sources, and you write the best possible answer. Your tutor then reads your answer and discusses it with you for a whole hour. Some of the points you make in your answer may be discussed further with the tutor, may be challenged, and the question at hand may be examined from other angles, other perspectives. By the end of the tutorial, you should have a much better sense of the topic and its stakes.
Politics at Oxford is part of 2 degrees. It's part of philosophy, politics and economics, and it's also part of history and politics. The study of politics at Oxford is primarily through 3 different lenses. First of all, political theory, which is more akin to the philosophical study of politics. Comparative politics, which is more akin to how we approach economics, in that it treats politics and human behavior via politics as a science, and also international relations, which is focused, of course, on the relations between countries and often borrows a little bit from political theory and also from comparative politics. In tutorials, and in the tutorials that I teach, which are nearly all focused on comparative politics, we are interested in trying to understand the underlying theoretical frameworks that might help us to generalize and understand politics across space and over time. In tutorials, students are asked, or prior to tutorials, students are asked to prepare a 2,000-word essay on a particular topic, and during the tutorials themselves, we spend most of the time trying to unpick and trying to understand the major theoretical arguments and causal mechanisms that would have informed and undergirded the essay that you wrote in preparation for the tutorial itself.
My tutorials with students are diverse. They can range from discussing the scientific literature on which students have written essays, to debates on the reality of species, to understanding the distribution of deep sea sediments. My tutorials can also have a practical element. So, for example, we often examine rock and fossil specimens, and we discuss their characteristics and any inferences we can draw from those rocks and those fossils. For example, their paleo-environmental context.
So what's a tutorial in English like? It's a question I get asked a lot at open days. In practical terms, a tutorial is an hour-long conversation, a session that involves the tutor, someone like me, and 1 or 2 students. Students will write an essay in advance of the tutorial, and this then forms the basis of that conversation between them and the tutor. And that conversation centres on the particular questions, interests, and arguments that have arisen from a student's reading. Tutorials give you the chance to discuss ideas and issues in depth with your tutor. They're incredibly effective spaces for developing a student's thinking and writing. What's more, tutorials give students a chance to read what interests them. For instance, in a given week, some students might opt to read and write about the Gothic novel, while others opt for satirical poetry or tragic drama. Students in a tutorial shape their own curriculum. The other thing to say about tutorials is that the tutorial essay is a form that actively encourages students to take risks, to test out new ways of thinking, new ways of working and arguing. Tutorial essays aren't assessed. If something doesn't work, it doesn't matter. You'll learn from what doesn't work, and indeed next time you'll try something else, and that way you'll become a better writer and a better critic.
When it comes to students, I am not interested in students that know an awful lot about politics in real-world empirical terms, but what I am interested in is students who have the ability to think abstractly, to think critically, who are able to engage with theoretical models and theoretical ideas, and I'm also very interested in students who are willing to listen and willing to countenance other ideas or other arguments, and who are open to being taught about politics and about the wider general world.
I've been studying and teaching philosophy for about 45 years. I first came across it as a sixth former, although I wasn't studying it formally at school. There was a philosophy A-level back then, but it was extremely unusual for people to do it. And in fact, even now it's true that a lot of our applicants have not been studying the subject formally at school. And that doesn't matter. We're not expecting that in our applicants. What we are expecting and what we're looking for is a keen interest in the subject and an enthusiasm for it. So what that means is having a keen interest in asking absolutely fundamental questions, not being prepared to take anything for granted, not being afraid to challenge appeals to authority. So, for example, a philosopher might ask a question like, why should the sheer fact that scientists tell us that something is true mean that we should think it's true? Where does science get its special authority from? Or they might ask, what exactly is wrong with breaking a promise if it's in one's self-interest? Everybody seems to take for granted that that is wrong, but why? I often liken philosophers to people that have never really grown up. Those of you that have much younger brothers and sisters will know that they're constantly asking the question why. And whatever answer you give them, it never seems to satisfy them. It just seems to result in another why. And in that sense, what philosophers are doing, I think, is tapping the inner child that's in all of us.
I look for intellectual curiosity and hard work. A lot of reading and writing go into preparing for tutorials and seminars, and so a real taste for the subject and a real dedication to it are important and very much pay off.
I'm looking for students that are going to be really interested and engaged in language. They're really interested in what's going on in our minds, how language gets communicated, and what that might tell us about ourselves as humans or about our society more general.
As for what we're looking for in terms of the undergraduates whom we select to come and do Arc and Anth at St. Hugh's or in the wider university as a whole, most important thing of all is that people need to be curious. They need to be excited about both anthropology and archaeology. They need to be hardworking. They need to be passionate about their studies, and they need to be self-motivated. They need to be self-organized in the sense that, unlike school and unlike most other universities, they're going to have to do an awful lot of work here with assistance, with direction, but an awful lot of work here on their own.
We are looking for students who are curious and up for a challenge. So as I just mentioned that in a tutorial, you'll be having conversations about, ideas and defending them. So you'll also be able to understand an argument from different perspectives. I think it's also important that you're not afraid of failure, because we all fail all the time, but it's important that we just brush it off and just keep going, because eventually we will succeed. So resilience is what we're looking for as well.
In human sciences, we're looking for students that are curious about the human condition, who like thinking creatively between the sciences and humanities, who can grasp the biological and evolutionary approaches as much as the social and cultural aspects of human life. Above all, we're looking for students who can think critically and carefully, and who take delight in both the empirical and theoretical complexities of human life.
Ultimately, at Hughes, we're looking for students who want to challenge themselves, who enjoy discussing their ideas with other people, who see writing as a matter of process rather than a finished product. And we're looking for students who read widely and independently, who enjoy exposing themselves to texts from a range of cultures and a range of periods.
Oh, and there's one more thing I wanted to tell you about. Hey, Don, come here. Come here, buddy. This is my dog, Don. He sometimes joins us for tutorials. Say hi, Don. Oh, woo! He's a real big help around here. Well, if you have any other questions, feel free to get in contact with us, and we hope to answer all of those and see you all sometime in the future. Bye!